morning, everyone. Good to see all of you here this morning. Once again, if you're visiting with us, we want you to know that you are a welcome guest. We're so very thankful that you have chosen to be with us here this morning. For those of you who are back in the remote service, welcome as well. Thank you for giving up your seats so that our visitors can find a place to sit as well. It's just a good day to be here. I was sharing with our class this morning about our weather and so forth, and I was trying to find a place to place the blame. And so all of you know where this weather came from, right? You all know who's the cause of this weather? Clint Davison. Clint Davison is the reason. And the reason why is because he said that, he moved here because we have 4 seasons, and if you have 4 seasons, then one of them is winter, and so just live with it. You just have to accept it as nasty weather and live with it. But to him I say no. No, we shouldn't have to live with 24 inches of snow. We're used to 11 inches cumulative over a year period in our valley here, and this is ridiculous, Clint. But anyway, no, the farmers will be very happy. They won't have to worry about water. Those who take care of the water will be worrying because they won't know how much water to let out of Anderson and Arrow Rock and Lucky Peak and fill up the rivers and things like that. But anyway, it's good. I was thinking about, this is the day the Lord hath made. I'll rejoice and be glad in it. Every day is a good day. God is good all the time. And all the time, absolutely. And it's because we just have, life is good as Christians. I'm not saying life is perfect in terms of physicality and sometimes our emotions and so forth, but life really is good in terms of the promises that God has given to us, that He promises to be with us. No matter where our foot might step, He is going to be with us. And in that we can rejoice that the day truly is a good day. Well, let's talk a little bit about 2017 and just ask about this question here. How many of you would say that you are a visionary kind of person? That you have a vision for things. Well, what is visionary? Well, a person who is visionary is a person who is constantly thinking and planning about the future, either by their imagination or by wisdom, but they're always going there. So if you're not visionary, what is it that causes us not to be so? What is it that disturbs our vision of things? What is it that stops us? Well, I think there's one word that at least crops up in my mind, and that's the word obstacles. Obstacles come before us, and we don't see them oftentimes as opportunities to do great things. Oftentimes we see them as obstacles that are going to stop us, and that's what the word obstacle means. It's a thing that blocks one's way or prevents one from progressing. It hinders our progress. That's what obstacles are. And oftentimes in life, we find that obstacles are going to come before us as individuals. And even as Christians, we're going to find ourselves having to face obstacles from time to time. Henry Ford, who was the father of the American automobile industry, he said this about obstacles. He said, obstacles are those frightful things that you see when you take your eyes off of your goal. That's what obstacles do. Obstacles stop you from seeing the possibilities that can go on in life because we become blurred in terms of our visions. So what is the difference between something that is impossible and something that is improbable? When you talk about impossibilities, you're talking about that's something that just absolutely 100% cannot be done. When you talk about improbable, you're talking about that should not be done. That can't be done. That's something that you should not be able to overcome. But you might be able to overcome it. You might be able to do it. Take, for instance, this man that's behind me. That's Charles Lindbergh. In 1927, he flew solo by himself for the first time over the Atlantic from New York City to Paris, France. Took him 22 hours or 33 hours to fly that portion. Now, most of us would look at that and say, well, what's the big deal there? Because I myself have flown over the Atlantic at least 20 times. Takes me anywhere from 12 to 8 hours to do so, depending on where I depart from in the United States. And so what's the big deal flying over the Atlantic unless it had never been flown over before? Charles Lindbergh decided to do it. He did it without a radio. He did it without any kind of scope. He did it without vision to a large extent because there wasn't a front windshield in the Spirit of St. Louis and so forth. It wasn't there because they put a spare gas tank there in its place. And so he had to look out a periscope of a 2-lens mirror and so forth. That's how he saw where he was going. There was no radar. There was no one for him to talk about direction. He had no parachute. There wasn't anything there. He had to stay awake for 33 hours. There wasn't an autopilot. So he had to stay with that thing all the way for 33 hours, nonstop. He flew from New York to Paris, France. Everyone in the industry said that's an absolute impossibility, and what he did was impossible until he did it. Then you have this fellow here. The English Channel is 22 miles wide. It's got angry, cold water. Many athletes had tried to swim across the English Channel. Most had failed. But in 1941, this man here, this Argentina person by the name of Antonio Aberdanto, he actually swam across the English Channel. It took him about 19 hours or so. He did it at the age of 42. They said it's an absolute impossibility for a man of that age, much less a person who is in super good shape, who is an extreme athlete, to do that. This guy was able to do it. He swam across, I think it took him like 19 hours to swim across the English Channel. And when he arrived on the other side, he swam up on the shore and stepped into France and so forth. His friends and his fans, they met him there. They were slapping him on the back, and they were just, they were just screaming, just going crazy. It was an incredible feat that he did. He took a couple of sips of some warm liquid and so forth, and he says, if you think this is impossible, now you're going to see the impossible. And he turned around and dove back into the English Channel and swam back to the other side of that thing. It took him 43 hours and 10 minutes to do that. They said that was an impossibility. Number one, to swim it once, but to swim it twice at the age of 42. And if you look at the picture of this guy, this is not a skinny dude. But he was able to, maybe it's buoyancy, I don't know. But he was able to do an incredible feat. Or Mary Fasano. Mary Fasano was an interesting person. In the 8th grade, her parents pulled her out of school and forced her to go into the cotton mills to work. And that's what she did. She was about 13 years old when that happened and so forth. At the age of 71, she decided, or 55 years later, she goes back to high school and graduates at the age of 71. And then she enters into an extension school to Harvard University. And for the next 15 or so years, she goes every night to school, to night school. She travels 20 miles from Cambridge to Cambridge. She does it week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out. And at the age of 89, she graduates from the Harvard University. Now, that's something that's impossible to do. You shouldn't be able to do it, but she was able to do it. And so when you talk about the difference between that which is possible and that which is improbable, oftentimes the impossible is not the impossible. Sometimes the impossible is the improbable. It's something that shouldn't be done, but it can be done. But oftentimes we allow the obstacles in our lives to cower us from attempting great things for God's sake. Because the difference between the impossible and the improbable is God. Especially when it comes down to who we are as Christians. As who we are as a congregation, there are things out there that seem impossible for us to do in our way of thinking. We add 1 plus 1 equals 2. It should always do that. But sometimes it does in the kingdom of God. Sometimes the impossible becomes the possible because God says it is a possibility. So last week, Clint, he ushered us into, I guess 2 weeks ago, Clint ushered us into 2017. And as he introduced us into 2017, he took us to Joshua chapter 1 through about chapter 4 and so forth. And there he took us to the Jordan River. And as he took us before the Jordan River, the children of Israel would look at the impossibilities of doing that. Because you see, they had been here before. 40 years before that, they found themselves at Kadesh Barnea at the shores of the Jordan, getting ready to cross in. And God said to Moses, I want you to take 12 men. I want you to send them out into this promised land to reconnoiter the land. When they went there, they found that the land was truly filled with milk and honey. There were large grape vineyards. There were cisterns that were already hewed. And they came in, they gave the report back to the children of Israel. And the report was, some was negative and some of it was positive. You remember the children's song, 10 were bad and 2 were good. Well, 2, Caleb and Joshua, they came back and said, the land is a good land. It's a land that God has given to us. It's a land that's filled with milk and honey. The cisterns are there. There are fortresses, there are houses, everything is just waiting for us to go there. God has given the land to us. But 10 said, no, you can't go into the land. That's an impossibility because, listen, there are giants in the land, the Anakim. Those who were associated, to Goliath, they are in the land. The fortresses are impregnable. They're huge fortresses. And it's a harsh land. It's a land that devours the people, even the inhabitants of it. It devours the people because it's a harsh land. Because of the obstacles that they could not see the good things that were in the land. So here they are, for the second time. That generation has died, and their bodies are littered, across the wilderness as that generation dies off, and a new generation comes on board with a new challenge to go in and to take the land, which means several things that Clint reminded us of. Number one, they're going to have to put their past behind them. They're going to have to forget about the fact that they had been there, that the generation has died, and so forth. Here they are once again before the Jordan River, and God has promised them the promised land, the good land, Canaan land, to go into that land, but they're going to have to put their past behind them, and they did, as Clint shared with us. There's a reoccurring theme that you'll find in chapter 31 of Deuteronomy and chapter 1 of Joshua, and that reoccurring theme is God says this: be strong and courageous, or be strong and of good courage. Do not dismay. I know the obstacles are going to be there. Listen, the giants are going to still be in the land. 40 years later, they're still going to be there. The fortresses, they're still going to be there. The harsh land is still going to be there, but it's also going to be a land filled with milk and honey. The vineyards are going to be there. The houses are going to be there. The cisterns are going to be, everything that you need to prosper in this good land is still there. And so God says to them, listen, be strong and courageous. Keep my commandments. Do what I say. Walk by faith. I will give you this land. That's God's promise to this people. So he tells them over and over again to be of good courage, to not dismay. Why? Because one time in their history they had become discouraged. One time they had become fearful to the point that it says of them in Numbers that they had become like grasshoppers in their own sight, and in the sight of those who were on the other side of the Jordan, the same thing. Not this time around. Now they have another leader who's going to be Joshua, who's given the reins. God told Joshua, be strong and courageous. Tell the people to be the exact same way and step out on faith. So they're to leave their past behind. They're to step out on faith, knowing that they're going to get their feet wet, as Clint shared with us last week. As they got ready to cross into the Jordan, the priests were to lead them with the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders, and they were to step out into a flooding Jordan River. Remember, it's flooding, it's springtime and so forth, but God stops the water up north, and they then cross on dry ground. It took a stepping out on faith and for them to act on their faith. Well, the children of Israel have done some incredible things, but now, in our text this morning that I'd like you to open your Bibles to, over to Joshua chapter 5, in that section of Scripture, Joshua is going to lead them up against the next obstacle, and this is going to be a formidable obstacle to say the least. But God is one who has promised them great things if they would simply be obedient to him and follow after what he has said for them to do. He's going to lead them to their first battle. In fact, here's what God said to them. He said to them, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you. No man shall be able to stand before you. I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Now that's found over in Joshua, the first chapter, verses 3 through 5. That's God's promise to Joshua. So Joshua knows this. Joshua knows that the only thing between possessing the promised land was just a limit of their vision to obtain it. Either they're going to see it as an obstacle or they're going to see it as opportunity to do a good thing and to be in a good place. That is what is before them. And I want you to note something here, okay? As God tells them that wherever your foot goes and wherever your footstep moves, I will give you that land, does not mean that they're not going to have to do some things about it. It doesn't mean that they're not going to have to act on their faith. As I mentioned to you, the giants are still in the land. The fortresses still exist. The country is still harsh and so forth. Those things are still there. Even Joshua is going to have to demonstrate faith. I mean, he is a great man, but even he has to have faith that God will do what he said he would do. So it is still there, and so it's a vision kind of thing. Almost all of us have heard this saying here. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. Well, the promised land was worth fighting for, and God said so, but God promises the Israelites victory wherever they go. Well, the first victory, or victory over obstacle, first begins with a vision, okay? And that's where I want you to look at Joshua chapter 5. Joshua chapter 5, and I want you to notice verse 13. Because as they cross the Jordan River, okay, they approach Jericho. They see Jericho out there in the distance, okay? Joshua, it's my belief that Joshua goes out and he decides to independently reconnoiter Jericho, to look it over. just to see what's going on here, okay? Look at verse 13. It came about when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked. And behold, a man was standing opposite him with a sword drawn in his hand. Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And he said, "No, rather indeed I come now as the captain of the host of the Lord." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said to him, "What has my Lord to say to his servant?" And the captain of the Lord of hosts said to Joshua, "Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. Now, if you go down to the chapter 1, it says, "Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the sons of Israel. No one went out and no one came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand with the king and the valiant warriors." So the thought that went into my mind here is why does he end chapter 5, verses 13 and following with Joshua going out and looking at Jericho? And then all of a sudden being confronted with this man with a sword drawn in his hand. Well, most say that this is what is called Christostomy. Christostomy, which means that it's the idea that Christ is appearing in the form of a man. There's another word for it, anthropomorphism, and that's the idea of that God appears as a man. We know that he's more than just a man because what does Joshua do? He bows down and he worships him, and the man says, "This is holy ground." Joshua asked this man this. He says, "Listen, are you for us or against us? Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And the man says, "I'm not for either one of you. I'm for me. I am the captain of the Lord of hosts, or the hosts of the Lord, and that's who I am. And so I am battling for the Lord. That's who I am concerned about. And Joshua is going to be this huge thing that is going to come up before you, and you need to know who is in control of this battle." Ancient Jericho was a fortress city. It was of an immense proportion when you think about fortress kinds of city. It was a double-walled city, number one. It was 6 to 8 stories high. It was, the outer wall was like 6 feet thick, 6 to 8 stories high. The inner wall was 12 feet thick. And in between the two walls is a killing ground. It's a killing ground because if you breach the first wall, then there's the ground in between where they could shoot arrows, throw spears, and throw heavy objects and pour hot liquids down upon you. That's what that ground was all about, and that's why it was a double wall. So if you got past the first and second defenses, then you came to this second wall, which is even more immense than the first wall, and that's the walls that you're going to have to breach. And inside were a fierce people who are more than willing to fight for their lives, and that's what Joshua finds himself up against. But Joshua's eyes are open to the possibilities. And the possibilities that are open to is this, is number one, the battle belongs to the Lord. And that's what chapter 5, verses 13 and following is about. That's what this man is saying to him. That's what he is saying. He said, listen, the battle belongs to the Lord. I got a sword that's drawn here, and it's for defeating things, but I'm not for you or against you. Who I am for is I'm for the Lord. The battle belongs to the Lord. Secondly, God gave him a vision. Here is the vision, and he says to him, see, I have given Jericho into your hands, along with its kings and its valiant warriors or its mighty men. Dial in on that word, see. See, I have given it to you. Who gave it to Joshua? Who is going to give this to the children of Israel? God says, I am the one that's going to give it to you. This is going to be my battle. This is a battle that's not going to be won with spears. It's not going to be won with arrows. It's not going to be won with swords. It's not going to be won with rocks or laying siege to a fortress. I'm the one that's going to fight this battle. I'm the one that's going to give you Jericho, the king, and the valiant men that are in it. The word see is this Hebrew word here, ra, and it's a word that means to envision something, to see far beyond the physical realm of present reality. We can say even to see beyond the realm of impossibility and see it as something that is possible. God is saying this is something that can be done. It's something that will be done because see, I have given it to you. In other words, the vision of the fall of Jericho was based not upon Israel's power or their military might or their strategies or any of those things, but upon God himself. He's the one that's going to give them Jericho. Another word for the word vision is the word dream. Is the word dream. It's to be able to see the impossibles, to become the improbable, to becoming that which is possible to be done. Whenever I think of dream, I can't help but think of Martin Luther King's words in his great speech where he says, I have a dream. And his dream was equality between men and women of all races. That was his dream. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a dream? Do you have a vision for your own life and what you're going to do with your life and so forth? And not only that, what about your vision for our congregation? In other words, what I'm saying to you is, what are the Jerichos in your life? Because it's my belief that in life we find ourselves facing a lot of obstacles that come at us. At least that's the way it is in my life. There are obstacles that come at me in life that seem like as though they're impossible, but they're not impossible when God is on my side. That doesn't mean that things will always be great, okay? I'm not saying that we'll always be healthy and wealthy and prosperous and things of that. I'm not giving you a pie in the sky idea. What I'm saying to you is that God is able to do incredible things in our lives when we put our trust in Him. So my question to you this morning is, what are the Jerichos of your life? Maybe it's taking a new job position. Maybe it's meeting a financial need that's out there. You say, man, I just don't know how I'm going to get by this thing here. I remember when I was in school, man, when we went to school, we went from a really high-paying job to school making zero, almost nothing. I think we went from making pretty good money in '79 to making like $800 a month. And that paid utilities and rent, which is a little over $400, getting to gas. I lived 23 miles from school, driving both ways, paying for books, doing everything. And you thought, how in the world are we going to do this? You know, but I remember a time when things got really tight on us. And I got a piece of mail that came to us. And I got that thing, and I opened it up, and it said a $500 check. My dad had written me a $500 check. So I called him up, and I said, hey, Dad, thanks for the check. Hey, listen, is this check supposed to only have 1 0 or 2 zeros? Because back in that day, that $500 was quite a bit of money. He says, no, he says, that's just for you and Lori and the kids. And you guys go out and have dinner and go to a show or something like that, you know. But it came out of nowhere. Other times, you'd have it really hard and you think, how are you going to do this? And someone would walk up and shake your hand. When I was at school, would shake your hand. The congregation was Cedar Hill, would shake your hand. When they shook your hand, you pulled your hand away and they left a $50 bill in your hand. I've seen that many times in this congregation where you have helped my family. Clint and I, we live according to God's grace and God's grace through you that makes all things possible for us as ministers here. And we know that, and we're appreciative of that. But, you know, obstacles that are there, recovering or fighting some deadly illness. You may not get over the illness. You may not get over the sickness. But God can be with you all the way through that turmoil, and He promises to be with us in that period. Rebuilding a relationship that maybe has gone bad. Reaching a goal. Starting or keeping a business. I mean, the examples are endless about the Jerichos that we have, and I'm simply telling you that the battle belongs to the Lord when we put our trust in Him, when we're willing to leave the past behind, to step out in faith, and to act on our faith. God can do some incredible things in our lives, especially as we strive to walk closer with God. But let's move past that from individual to who we are as a congregation. What is your dream or your vision for reaching the lost and strengthening the body here of Linder Road in 2017? What's your vision for our congregation? I'm going to share with you what some of the vision for our congregation is that our elders and our deacons and different ministry teams have come up with in 2017. What we're trying to do is we're trying to not only reach out to the lost, but educate. And not only educate, but to build people up. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to build some bridges to our community. In years past, when we did evangelism, the way we went about it is that we would train people up in some kind of methodology of evangelism, like the Open Bible Study method, or the gospel presentation, or the Joe Miller film series, or a whole bunch of those kinds of things. And so we would train people up, and we'd say, okay, now you're trained up, now go get them. Go out there and win some souls, which we know that that's a pretty hard thing to do. It's a pretty frightening thing to do, because when you go up to people that are that you don't know all that well, then you feel as though you are invading their space. You feel as though you're being judgmental and that you're being critical. And so it's kind of a scary, risky thing. So to build a bridge sometimes is easier. We might call that an outside-in philosophy, where we train up how to soul win and so forth, but we build bridges to our community that allows them to come to us so that we can teach them. Okay, so we're trying to build some bridges, and one of the things that we're going to do here on April the 28th and 30th, that's a Friday night for 2 hours and Saturday night for 2 hours, we have rented Centennial's Performing Arts Building, a neutral area, and we're going to invite our entire community to come and listen to this young man that's behind me. His name is Wissam Al-Athawi. He's an incredible young man. He's going to come. He lives in Detroit, Michigan right now. He's going to come and he's going to share with us what it means to be an Islam, a person of Islam or a Muslim, and how we can work with these people and how we can offer them the gospel, because he says they are a searching kind of people. The incredible thing about Wissam is this. Wissam was born in Iraq, in Baghdad, raised in Baghdad. He served under Saddam Hussein's Republic Army. He served in it. He went to the university and got a degree as well. Wissam was a Muslim through and through until one day he became so disengaged with it because of the harshness, the murder, the deaths, the things that were happening around him. He walked away from all those kinds of things. He says, I'm done with God or any kind of God. When he thought about the God that you know, the God of Christianity, of Judeo-Christianity and so forth, he saw that kind of God as a very narrow kind of God and a God that didn't have it going whatsoever. In fact, he didn't know anything really about him. One day he's out on the streets of Baghdad and he sees a Bible on the road. He picks it up and he starts reading it. He is absolutely blown away with what he is reading about this God. He's reading from the Gospel of John. In fact, it really wasn't a whole Bible. It was just the Gospel of John, which is the Gospel of belief. And he read about Jesus in this book here because the Jesus of Islam is different from the Jesus of the Bible, and he is reading from it, and he was absolutely amazed by that. And then he found out that there was more than just the Gospel of John in the Bible, that there was actually 26 other books in the New Testament. So he went to he went and he bought the New Testament, and he read it from front to cover, and he was blown away by it, and he came to the decision that he needed to be baptized into Christ. And then he found out there was an Old Testament. So he went to his uncle, who was a barber, and borrowed money from him and went and bought an entire Bible. He learned how to become a Christian. He became a Christian after 10 years. He wanted to be baptized. No one would baptize him in the area. No one. One night he was on the internet, searching around on the internet, ran across a guy, I think he's over in England. I think it was in England, and the guy says to him, he says, you need to be baptized. And Wissam says, well, yeah, I know I need to be baptized. He goes, well, you need to get baptized then. He goes, no, listen, I live in Baghdad. People die here for becoming Christians here. You don't just do that stuff. No one will baptize me. I've been trying. No one will baptize me. He says, well, then I'll baptize you. He goes, did you not see what I said? I live in Baghdad. The man says, no problem. I'll fly to Turkey. I'll send you money for a bus ticket up to the northern part of Iraq. I will meet you. I'll cross the border. I'll meet you and I'll baptize you. And that's exactly what happened. Wissam came home and decided he couldn't stay in Iraq. So he sought asylum in America. So he came to America. He ran out of money very quickly. Some Amish people took him in Pennsylvania, hid him away because he went past his time that he's supposed to be there. And eventually he met a Christian couple there. They said to him, you need to go to school. He goes, I don't have any money. I don't know what school to go to. He says, we know some people. We'll raise the money. We'll get your green card. We'll get all your papers together so you can stay in the United States. He went to Sunset. He became a preacher. He now preaches in the Detroit, Darien, and a place where the largest segment of Muslims live in the world. Islam is going to be with us. And he's going to say this to us. He's going to tell us, listen, there are two kinds of people when it comes down to Islam. There are those who know Islam and those who think they know Islam but don't. I will tell you what it's like to be a Muslim. And I'll tell you about the superiority of being a Christian. It's going to be a great evening and something that you invite all your friends and your neighbors to. It's a great way to build a bridge because not only will he tell them about Islam, he'll tell them the truth about the gospel of how to become a Christian. It'll be a great time. One of the things that we haven't done in like 12 years is a youth forum. So this year, in May the 4th through the 6th, we are going to have a youth forum. The theme is Unbound. That's going to be a wonderful time to educate our teens. We're going to bring in a great speaker. He's going to lift our teens up. He's going to challenge them. We'll be a great source of light to our community. We're going to try something different this year. We're going to do Leadership and Training for Christ, LTC. What is it? Leadership and Training for Christ Northwest Region is an organization designed to stimulate, encourage spiritual, mental, and social growth among young men and women in the 3rd through the 12th grades. It's a mission to achieve this growth by developing skills in leadership, Bible knowledge, and Christian servanthood. And so we have devoted a certain number of our budget to this project here, and we're going to send some of our children, our teens and so forth, to LTC for that competition. It's run by the Church of Christ, and it's going to be a great time. But that's something different we're going to do to develop, because our children are what? They're not only our future now, our present now, but they are our future. And the more we can strengthen them and build them up in leadership, the better that will be. Vacation Bible School is going to be June the 13th through the 16th. It should be more than just educating our children. It's a bridge to our community where we can bring our little ones in and expose them to what God is about and what Jesus is about. And then there's our lectureship. It's called Better Than this year. It's a study in the book of Hebrews, the supremacy of Christ. We've got all of our speakers on board. It's going to be a great lectureship. I know every year we say it was better than the last one, but this should be, I believe it's going to be a great lectureship for us. Then we go to have men's retreats and women's retreats and just a whole bunch of other things. But the big one of the big challenges that's going to be placed before us next week is our new building that we've been talking about. What was it, about 5 or 6 years ago that we went out and purchased this property, 21.8 acres of land, almost 22 acres of land. 6 years ago, that property there was worth, when we looked at it, was $1.6 million. Impossible, huh? No way can we buy that kind of land. Until about 2 years later, the economy went in the tank, and we bought that land for $200,000. It sounds like a God thing, doesn't it? Sounds like something only God could do. Have you ever thought about our congregation and the growth of our congregation and how many elders and how many deacons? That's unheard of in a congregation of this size. But God has just placed things in front of us that are incredible, like this piece of property. By the way, we bought that property. We put it on a 5-year deal that we would buy it. We'd have it paid off in 5 years. We paid it off in 2? It's our land to do whatever we want with on it. We decided we're going to build a building, so we hired an architect and a designer and a builder, and they have been working on this property. And one of the things that they have shared is that Wendell's going to share with you in depth next week is this new building here that looks something like what we're talking about. It's a building that will seat 1,000. We'll start out with seating 600 people to begin with. But that's there. And I know that some of you might be looking at this saying, man, I'm just overwhelmed. I don't know if this can happen. I don't know if there's a possibility. Well, you know what? I think among us, within ourselves, it is impossible. We're not going to be able to crack this nut. But I can tell you who can. And that's God. Listen, Jericho is a perfect example of an obstacle like this that people would say, that is an impossibility. You can't do it. The vision of 2017 is all about giving God glory. It's not about us. It's not about saying we can get a big building. It's not about us doing a Islam seminar or youth forum or any of those kinds of things. It's all about glorifying God. By worshiping, by educating, by serving, by fellowshipping, by evangelism. That's what the church is. That's what the church is about. Secondly, not only does God give us a vision to overcome obstacles, victory over obstacles takes a lot of faith. When you look at the scriptures and what is going on here in this section of scripture, God is going to place before them this huge possibility, this huge dream that is there for them to overcome. Hebrews, the 11th chapter and verse 1 says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Joshua has received a command from God to go in and to take the land. He, by faith, is going to have to do that. But to do that, he's going to have to get the people up and ready to go. Imagine trying to get the army together. And as he starts to talk to the people, he says, here's the plan. The plan is this. It's seen in chapter 6, verses 3 down through 5. Here's the plan. The plan is that we're going to go out en masse to the walls of Jericho. And we're going to march around it one time. And at the end of that, there are going to be 7 priests with trumpets that are going to be leading the Ark of the Covenant. And they're going to blow the horn at the end of that thing, one time. On the 7th day, when we go around this property, we're going to stop, and the trumpets are we're going to walk around 7 times, and the trumpets are going to blare. And when they are blown, then you are all to shout. And when you shout, the walls are going to come down. They're going to fall flat. Now, if I had been an Israelite, I'd be saying, maybe we got to think a little bit more about this strategy here. Because I don't think walls come down that way. I think walls come down by battering rams and siege engines, and by us shooting some arrows and throwing some spears and yelling bad names at those people. But I don't think it's going to come down by us being silent and just marching around this thing. Joshua has to have faith that God is going to do exactly what he said he's going to do. He had to have faith in that, and he had to breed that kind of faith in him. So faith really is taking God at his word and responding in obedience. In other words, faith sees the invisible and it acts upon it. God says, here's the way we're going to take Jericho. Remember, God has said, the battle is mine. The battle is not yours. See, I have given you Jericho and its king and all the valiant warriors in it. I am the one that's going to give that. So guess what they did? They marched around that thing. They marched around the walls, and they did exactly as God said for them to do. And on the last day, they marched around it 7 times. The horns blew, the shofar, they blew, and the people shouted, and the walls came down. In fact, if you look at archaeology, the walls did not fall outward. The walls fell inward. Walls don't fall inward, they fall outward. These walls fell inward, both walls inward, which meant the children of Israel went up, because it says, and the children of Israel went up into Jericho. They went up into it. They went over the walls and into Jericho, and they took it. God had given them that land. Israel took Jericho without a stone being thrown, a spear being thrown, an arrow being shot. Without any siege engines, they took the fortress because God says, I'm giving you it. This was God's victory. It always is. It always is. And we get to be a part of it. The children of Israel got to be a part of that, taking of Jericho. What I'm saying to you is that I believe that God will help us to overcome our Jerichos. But we're going to have faith to do this. This Islam seminar, it seems like maybe you think it's an easy thing. It's been a lot of work for those who have been getting it ready, okay? But we want our community to come to it. We don't want us just to show up to it. We want our community to come to it. We want hundreds, 1,000 people, if we could, to get to come and listen to this. Because not only will they learn the truth about Islam, they'll learn the truth about the gospel of Jesus Christ as well. And it'll be incredible. Same way with our youth forum, to have our building filled up with our teenagers so we're out into the hallways, that would be a great victory for us. And it can be done if we're willing to put forth the work. Teens, if you're willing to put forth the work, and to step out a little here. And this building thing here, I know you're saying to yourself, man, when you hear what this thing is going to cost next week, you're going to go, ugh. I mean, like it's going to be like the oxygen is going to be sucked out of here for about a moment. But I want you to know who is the owner of the bank accounts. And that God can do some amazing things when we put our trust in Him. And if we keep focused, not on the obstacle, but the opportunity. I was talking to the elders in some emails that we've been shifting back and forth on some different subjects and so forth. And one of the elders said, well, you know what? Sometimes God sends us storms, as it's like the storm that we just had. But sometimes these storms become opportunities for us to do good things. He's talking about obstacles and overcoming obstacles. And so I'm just asking you to think about your vision for who we are going to be and what we're going to do to reach out to our community, to build up one another and decide, are you going to be one who will encourage it or one that will discourage it? Will you be the one that is willing to do the stepping and the marching, or will you be the one that sits back and say, you guys are crazy. We shouldn't be doing this. Maybe we should. I don't know, I don't know where God will be in all this. I just know that when we stay within His will, God can do some amazing things for us. The most important thing of all, though, is what is your vision for eternity? Where are you going to spend eternity? If the Lord were to come right now, would you know for sure nothing down, you'd go to heaven? If you can't answer that question, then I want to talk to you after services. Or I can point to you someone that you can talk to about, because we want you to be saved and we want you to go to heaven. That's our ultimate goal. This life is very brief. It ends much more quicker than we ever want it to be. It doesn't matter whether you're a young person or an older person. Life is a fleeting thing. Eternity is out before us. Where are you going to spend eternity? What's your vision for that? Well, together we stand and while we sing.